The Cold War was a period of political tension between the United States and the USSR that lasted from 1945 to 1991. The Cold War did not involve actual fighting. Instead, there were competitions, such as reaching space first and developing nuclear weapons. Although the two countries didn't directly combat each other, there were wars that involved the philosophies of the opposing countries. This is the Vietnam War in plain English. The Vietnam War was a war waged by the United States against communism. Communist North Vietnam was attempting to spread communism to the south. The United States believed that if communism took over one country, it would continue to spread from country to country like dominoes falling in a line. The Vietnam War was fought between two opposing sides. The DRV, also known as the Viet Cong, fought against Southern Vietnam, also known as the Government of the Republic of Vietnam. Chinese and Soviet communists sided with the Viet Cong, while the US and France were aligned with the Southern Vietnamese. With the Cold War intensifying, the US backs the GVN, working under the domino theory, which held that if one Southeast Asian country fell to communism, many would follow. Kennedy increased US aid, though he stopped short of committing to a large-scale military intervention. By 1962, the US military presence in South Vietnam had reached some 9,000 troops. In March 1965, Johnson made the decision, with solid support from the American public, to send U.S. combat forces into battle in Vietnam. By June, 82,000 combat troops were stationed in Vietnam, and General William Westmoreland was calling for 175,000 more by the end of 1965 to shore up the struggling South Vietnamese army.
The war became a war of attrition, not necessarily trying to gain back territory, but just trying to kill as many enemy troops as possible. China and Soviets backed DRV, which leads to an increase in Air Force attack. Some major battles include the Battle of Xuan Loc, happening on April 9, 1975. It was a DRV victory in which they captured the city of Xuan Loc, and chaos ensued due to the constant harassment of northern citizens. The war ended with the final battle in Saigon, which occurred on April 29th and 30th. Here, the Viet Cong surrounded the capital and the South finally surrendered. As the Viet Cong stormed the capital city of South Vietnam, they were met with little resistance. After they captured the city, Operation Frequent Wind went into effect, and all American military personnel and civilians were evacuated from Saigon. By February of 1965, the United States had begun to regularly bomb North Vietnam. This led to the United States questioning the government's assertion that it was fighting a democratic war to liberate the South Vietnamese from communist rule. The people of the U.S. were outraged at all the resources going to the war. The strikes began on college campuses and spread to hippies and artists. Because this was such a small portion of America's, it didn't affect the larger populace of America, until the death toll skyrocketed. When Nixon ran for president, he declared that he would bring America out of Vietnam. This gained him the presidency.
So in conclusion, the Vietnam War led to almost 1.5 million casualties on both sides. This was devastating to the United States as they had to withdraw their forces after defeat in Saigon. The Vietnam War was known as a proxy war, meaning that it was a war instigated by a major power that doesn't get involved itself. In this case, the Soviets used the spread of communism in Vietnam to force the U.S. into the conflict. The U.S. stepped in because of their belief in the domino theory, that communism would quickly spread to other Asian countries if one fell to the communist regime. Also, the United States' involvement in the Vietnamese affairs set off mass protests because the war was very unpopular among the U.S. citizens. In relation to the Cold War, the Vietnam War strengthened the Soviets by proving that the U.S. can be beaten.